Excellencies, distinguished delegates, Secretaries General, it is my honor to welcome you all to the opening ceremony of the 26th Annual Haarlem Model United Nations. My name is Thomas Lee Ven, and it is my privilege to serve as the President of the General Assembly this year. We are living in a world that is dependent on political judgment and energy, the backbone of every advanced civilization. This year's theme, Power, What Makes the World Turn Around, is one that addresses the two ideas of power, which are inextricably linked. This theme addresses the crucial aspects of both energy and political power, recognizing that the world is at a critical juncture where we must discover how to power our future in a sustainable way and make real and radical changes to our society. But for that to happen, we need more than just ideas and plans. We need the other power, a political power. Our world is in a fragile state, both environmentally and socio-politically, and we must learn how to use power responsibly to create a better future for all. Delegates, throughout this MUN, you will take initiative and seek opportunities. Interpret the concept of power and work towards the construction of meaningful resolutions, solutions for the salvation of our planet and societies. Take into consideration the political power of the nations you represent and reach out to fellow delegates with different views during lobbying time. Let us embrace this theme and learn how to solve the pressing issues of our time by harnessing the power that lies within each of us. With that, I wish you all a remarkable time at the 26th edition of Haarlem Model United Nations. I will now ask the House to join me in a minute of silence for the victims of war and acts of terrorism, and for those seeking refuge from both. Thank you. We will now listen to a piece played on this historic organ called the Christian Müller organ, built in 1738, once played on by Mozart as a child. Anton Pau will be playing a composition by George Friedrich Handel, The Arrival of the Queen of Sheba, from the Oratorio Solomon. Handel played the Müller organ himself in the year 1740. Please welcome Anton Pau. Thank you. Thank you for that beautiful piece. I will now yield the floor to the principal of the Stedelijk Gymnasium, Jan Henk van der Werf. Mr. Werf, you now have the floor.
Honourable Mr. President of the General Assembly, Lord Mayor, dear Mr. Wiebes, dear staff, distinguished directors and BOD members, delegates and guests. It is a true privilege to address you today in this beautiful church at the start of the 26th edition of the Haarlem Model United Nations. I'm extremely happy, Mr. President, that despite Corona-dominated years, this great tradition has been kept alive. I am pleased to see such a great number of delegates in front of me and very happy with delegates from 11 countries. I'm grateful for the many generations of passionate contributors to the success of this event. Traditions do not fall from the sky. They're being shaped by vision, determination and hard work. Haarlem Model United Nations are a treasure of our school and form part of our identity. The relevance of the theme of this year's conference, Power, What Makes the World Turn Around, is in the light of current world events not up for discussion. The theme is incredibly challenging as it triggers loads of questions and brings many issues on the table that can be looked at from different perspectives. The website of the Haarlem Model United Nations states, "Our world is in a fragile state, both environmentally and socio-politically." In one sentence, two huge challenges are presented. We experience on a daily basis that dealing with these challenges simultaneously is by no means easy. Emphasizing the conservation of our fragile ecosystems, for example, may on the short term negatively impact large group of stakeholders and may lead to political upheaval and even violence. The transition to renewable energy resources may, at least temporarily, increase energy prices and negatively impact purchasing power. Each of us present today will be able to provide examples of conflicting interests of environment and economy from our own countries. So, how can we make balanced decisions based on sound judgment? What will make our future world turn around? Who or what holds the power to decide? Easy questions to raise, but terribly hard to answer. We do hope power will be distributed and exercised in the general interest of society as a whole. But the achievement of collective goals requires organization and leadership based on power. And that will make some groups more powerful than others. But power tends to corrupt. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. I do believe dialogue, discussion, mutual respect and exchange of ideas are essential for making our world turn around. And may the next days leave you convinced that we can make a difference to our families, our friends, our schools, our communities and our societies. That we do not have a planet with 7 billion issues, with a planet with 7 billion talents, and that there's more we have in common than what separates us. I wish all of you wonderful days, inspired discussions, and amazing new friendships. Thank you.
Thank you for this wonderful speech, Mr. van der Werf. We will now move on to the speech of the Secretary General, Celeste de Jong. Celeste, you now have the floor.
Honorable Presidency, distinguished guests and speakers, dear fellow Secretary General, hard-working executive staff members, esteemed student officers, respected MUN directors, and dear delegates. It is my sincere pleasure to welcome all of you to the 26th edition of Haarlem Model United Nations. I am incredibly proud to host 600 delegates in this beautiful Bavo church in Haarlem. It is wonderful to see so many talented and driven delegates gathered here to discuss, debate, and solve some of the world's most pressing issues. Last year, HMUN was restricted due to the coronavirus. And therefore, this year, we set the objective to double the number of participants and double the number of schools. It was an exciting challenge for our executive staff members to manage the organization that came with this expansion. And after a year of hard work, I am proud to say that we have achieved our objective and are indeed welcoming 600 delegates from many countries, ranging from Turkey to Norway and from Greece to France. Now, let me get to the theme of this conference. Power. What makes the world turn around? This is the question that you will be focusing on this weekend. And some of you might immediately think of political power, the power that an institution or an individual may hold over another person. Others amongst you may think the theme is about physical power, power as an energy source, and how we can globally meet the demand for energy while our world population and the world economy are continuing to grow and we are faced with climate change. And actually, these two concepts are both relevant. Our theme, power, what makes the world turn around, is multifaceted. And indeed, these two concepts are more intertwined than it might seem at first glance. In our world today, energy is of such vital importance for our lives and livelihoods that having and providing energy often equals having political power. Just imagine how rapidly our world is changing due to these two concepts. It was February of 2022 when at SG HMUN a conference we organized for the younger delegates of our school, when in the Security Council, we were discussing the potential threat of Russia possibly planning to invade Ukraine. And what impact this would have on power in its true meanings. Would the Western democracies bundle their powers to stand by the defending nation? And how would the European energy market be disrupted? Unfortunately, only a few mere days later, our hypothetical discussion in the Security Council became a brutal reality. In the coming days, you will be debating important issues related to power. And it might feel far away or even irrelevant to be discussing these global diplomatic issues. And you might assume I am not able to make a difference, not in the same way that a diplomat or a world leader can do. But let me humbly disagree. I truly believe that the power lies with us, the next generation of leaders. We have the power to make the world a better place. And this conference will equip us even better to realize our ambitions for the future by immersing ourselves in today's challenges. Now, let me wish all of you a wonderful and enlightening weekend. I wish you the power to change how the world turns around. Thank you. I yield the floor back to the presidency.
Thank you for this moving address. We will now have a speech by the Mayor of Haarlem, Jos Wienen. Dear Mayor, you now have the floor.
Dear attendees and leaders of the next generation. Welcome to the Grote Kerk, Bavo Kerk, here in Haarlem. Thank you for being here today. I am honored to address you as the mayor of this city. You are here to practice something that we desperately need in this world, the ability to listen to each other to find solutions to global problems. Cooperation and negotiation instead of shouting and fighting. Over the next few days, you will discuss the problems facing the world today, centered on the ambitious theme of power, what makes the world turn round. How do we enact change together? What does that require? Is it money? Is it power? Is it love? Is it politics? The United Nations? Well, perhaps a combination of all these factors. But as we are in Haarlem, I suggest adding another ingredient: courage. Haarlem's coat of arms can you see above the organ. And under it you can read Vicit vim virtus. Courage has conquered violence. The origin of this motto goes back at least 450 years. At this location, in 1573, you would have found a city rebelling against the Spanish army, the most powerful army of the world in that day. And the attention of the world was right on this place. We are talking about the 80 Years' War, rebelling against religious persecution, rebelling against Spanish rule, and rebelling against high taxation. Led by William of Orange, many rose up in resistance to the established order. On this day, 450 years ago, Haarlem had already been under siege for 4 months. No one could ever have imagined that the small city of Haarlem would have withstood the Spanish army for so long. The batteries, the cannons, battered the city walls with heavy cannon fire. The people of Haarlem had been facing extreme violence, hunger, cold, casualties and misery for 4 months already, and yet they still held out for another 3 months against an army that was many times bigger and stronger. How did they keep that up? Perhaps it was the courage of despair, but courage nonetheless. They didn't let themselves be paralyzed by the circumstances, but instead they fought for a good cause, for life and freedom. William of Orange is quoted as saying, "It is not necessary to succeed in order to act, nor to vanquish in order to persevere. It is not success, but the good cause that inspires you. And with persistence and courage, you can often achieve incredible results. Courage conquers violence." Those who initiate change need courage. If you believe that change is necessary, you need the courage to disrupt the old ways of doing things. The courage and inventiveness to think differently and to tell a different story. All around the world, every day, there are courageous people working to bring about change. The women of Iran, who risk their lives to protest for freedom and a better life. The Ukrainians, who have been fighting against the Russian invaders for over a year now. The people who are pushing for change to limit the effects of climate change and prevent ecological disasters. And yourself, your generation. You could go to parties and enjoy yourself and let it be. But you also can help to create a fairer and more sustainable world. Look for opportunities and work together to find solutions to global problems. You have more tools available to you than ever before. In a world gripped by military and economic tension and facing an alarming rate of environmental degradation, it is a challenge to think and talk about solutions and change. Many conferences are being held on the climate crisis, sustainability, water, hunger, poverty, war, inequality, oppression. These problems aren't new, but solutions are urgently needed. And these solutions require global cooperation. The interests of countries and regions and people are sometimes almost directly opposed to each other. That's why it's so important that you are all here to practice speaking, listening and finding solutions with each other over the next few days, and to find the courage to persevere. My advice to you all today is be courageous. Have the courage to defend your point of view, to listen to others, to connect, to gain new insights. Courage is what needed to change the world, and sometimes you first need to find it within yourself. But all that aside, I hope you enjoy the experience. It's an incredible opportunity to be able to talk with each other and to look for solutions, but don't forget to also enjoy being in this beautiful city and everything it has to offer, and to savor the interactions you have with your fellow young leaders. So, have fun.
Thank you for those welcoming words to this historically and culturally rich city. Now we will listen to the Secretary General, Peter von Lelyveld, for his speech. Peter von Lelyveld, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Esteemed staff members, distinguished guests, and dear delegates. Firstly, I want to wish you a very warm welcome to the 26th edition of Haarlem Model United Nations. For over 26 years, students full of fresh perspectives, dreams, and the desire to solve the most pressing issues have gathered here in the historical city of Haarlem. Not afraid to show their ambition to make the future better, and with a sense of purposeful optimism. This is what makes Model United Nations so powerful. It lays the foundation for students to develop themselves further than MUN seems to be on the surface. Delegates leave with a new view on international relations, enhanced negotiation skills, and the ability to think as a true diplomat. So, what is a true diplomat? Just this last January, I believed that a true diplomat was the one that spoke the most, could pass the most clauses, and had the nicest tie. Now, I'm not so sure of that. So what happened in January? In January, I was in Spain, participating in a simulation of the Arctic Council, an international body that focuses on building consensus between major nations and indigenous groups. This means that a resolution could only pass if all members, even those with only 2,000 inhabitants, fully agreed upon it. So I entered the room with a MUN mindset, ready to make the strongest speeches and win that Best Delegate award. But to my complete surprise, delegates were not determined to push their own clauses through. No, They were working hard to create a complete resolution together, running around, not to convince the bare minimum of a majority to pass their clause, but checking if every member fully agreed and supported it. This was a refreshing view on how diplomacy actually worked, and it made me take a second look at Model UN committees that are not consensus-based. And this is what I would like to share with you. I am concerned about the recent trend in the world of MUN. I see a shift from modeling diplomacy to modeling a shouting contest. How can we solve world issues without even listening to each other? Building consensus should be the very first step in issue solving. Surprisingly, we can see the same trend in actual international relations. Nations, parliament members, politicians start prioritizing their own beliefs and needs. There's so much speaking, but so little listening. The Netherlands is a country of consensus-based ideology, also on a national level. After all, we are the founders of the so-called Polder model, a system that tackles this very issue, described as cooperation despite difference. Polder is a typical Dutch word for a piece of land enclosed between dikes, and this name can be traced back to the period of time where the Netherlands mainly consisted out of mud and water. This church is barely even above sea level. Politicians, farmers and civilians had to work together to make sure their piece of land was kept dry. These people worked together to find a solution that was beneficial to all without sacrificing their own ideals. They solved the issue that we're facing in international diplomacy 600 years before it even existed. Now, how do we stop this trend in international relations? I would hope that the current leaders could share my insight, but it might eventually be up to our generation. How do we want to define this new age of policymaking? We need to realize that consensus, not only in MUN, are the cornerstone of issue solving. Stop thinking in winner-takes-it-all terms and start thinking in we can all be winners norms. Now, concretely, delegates, what does this mean for you? I have 3 pieces of advice. Firstly, reach out to your fellow delegates during lobbying time. Secondly, do not vote against something without considering how you could improve it through amendments. And finally, focus on constructive rather than deconstructive behavior. After all, the best delegate isn't the one who speaks the most or the loudest. No, it's the person that searches for unity among everyone, even those with fundamentally different ideologies. That is a true diplomat. And I hope that in 3 days, I can stand here, look around, and see many, many true diplomats. Thank you. I yield my time to the President.
Thank you for your insightful look into the state of diplomacy at MUN. Finally, we will listen to our keynote speaker, Eric Wiebes, and his thoughts on what power truly means.
Well, dear delegates, let me speak to you specifically. Thank you for inviting me. You're a very interesting group in a very interesting location. I was indeed asked to bring you a thought on power. And I realize that by now, in the end of the line, I'm competing for your attention with your neighbor, your phone, and a very cold church. But let me try it anyway. The topic of this conference is Power Makes the World Go Round. And first of all, you deserve congratulations for the topic. The search for power cannot start soon enough for your generation. There is so much to solve by you. Climate, food, water, and 14 other Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. There is a long list. And just one word of physics and then I stop. There's one thing that you do not need power for. This planet has gone round for 5 billion years all by itself. But for all the rest, you are rightly looking for power for your generation. So a logical starting point for this is who has the power? Most people who are asked will tell you it is the government. The governments have power. But is that really the case? Do governments ultimately have power? Why, if that were true, do governments have such a difficult time these days? In a democracy, governments need the support of parliaments. And without that, governments are totally helpless. So then, is it that parliaments have the power in a democracy? Is it? Parliaments are elected by voters. Parliaments need the continuous support of the people, and without that, parliaments are helpless. So then it must be the voter, the people, that have the power in a democracy. That may be true, but would people really feel that way? All these people have to obey the law, pay taxes, and they feel no daily impact on decisions of their governments. So, nobody has the power? Well, this is precisely the beauty of a democracy. Power does not lie in positions. Power does not follow hierarchy. A beautiful finding, nobody has power, but today and tomorrow in your generation, it doesn't help. So then, how should your generation acquire the power to solve all the issues of this generation? I think that thousands of years of history can give you a clue. And there are 3 things that can give you power. The issue is you need all 3 to make it work. And let's go through them. First of all, in thousands of years in history, societal changes have always been driven by great ideas. The starting point has always been a great idea. Whether it was human rights, technology, or even the construct of democracy itself, it always started with a great idea. And I realize, anger, protest, violence, they work temporarily. But the real driver of change are great ideas. And the greatest of ideas are bold but realistic. They're based on facts and deep understanding. They create new perspectives. They always go beyond self-interest, and they're inclusive. Otherwise, they're not great ideas. But since great ideas are key, we have the obligation to also listen to the great ideas of others and appreciate their great ideas. Great ideas can only become great when they're heard, when they're listened to. So it all starts with great ideas. But having a great idea, sadly, is not enough to make you powerful. You need a second thing too. And this is where I align with the mayor of Haarlem. That second thing is courage. Courage beats violence, but courage also challenges the status quo. It is the courage to speak up. It is the courage to reach out to your opponents. The courage to also accept improvements to your idea of others. It is also the courage to be openly vulnerable. That requires courage. And since courage is key, we must in turn respect and appreciate the courage of others. Being courageous is difficult. Courage is scary, and it deserves to be celebrated. But even having and respecting great ideas and being courageous and celebrating the courage of others are still not enough. There's a number 3. Great ideas and courage are only credible if you live your idea yourself. If you are prepared to be the role model for your idea, not just tell, also show. Take climate. So many of my generation stress the importance of climate action, but living it turns out to be not easy. And your generation is doing better in a number of ways. You're more aware of the climate impact of your behavior, but still living it is not easy. Also not for you. Your generation consumes, eats, drinks, buys, travels, and flies more than any previous generation at your age. Being a role model is a very hard task. It is difficult. All in all, power does not come with positions. You do not have to become a member of parliament. You do not have to become a minister, which, by the way, saves you a lot of time. Power comes with ideas, with courage, and with role modeling. It is these 3 that are responsible for, I would say, all human progress in the last 5,000 years, including democracy, science and technology, healthcare, arts, and everything else. So now it is your turn to propel further progress. The earth is yours. May the power be yours too. I wish you an inspiring conference.
Thank you, Eric Vibes, for your fantastic speech. Now, for a few quick announcements. For the external locations, you will be brought back to your committee by the hospitality team. If your committee is at the Stedelijk Gymnasium Haarlem, you must go there independently. I wish you all good luck debating. And now, by the power invested in me by the Haarlem Model United Nations Secretariat, I declare the 26th edition of HMUN officially opened.